The blood of kings is a heavy thing. It carries with it more than the weight of a throne. It carries the curse of power, of desire unchecked, of love twisted into obsession. In the ancient lands of Amun, where the sun kissed the earth with burning fingers and the sands whispered forgotten secrets, a pharaoh was doomed by his own bloodline, and a choice that should never have been made. This is the story of a throne that shattered the very soul of its ruler, a reign so dark it became legend. In the year 1523 BC, the ancient kingdom of Amun was teetering on the brink of ruin. Its people, a proud and devout civilization, had known only the rule of the Amunra dynasty for centuries. Pharaoh's blood was sacred, his reign was eternal, but beneath the gleaming gold of the throne lay an insidious secret. King Seti Amunra, the ruling pharaoh, was a man of unparalleled ambition, tall, regal. His sharp eyes glittered with the same burning desire that consumed his people's hearts' immortality. Seti was beloved by his people, a ruler who had expanded the borders of Amun and collected treasures from the corners of the known world. Yet, within the palace, there was an unspoken tension. His marriage to Queen Nefertari, a woman of both beauty and political importance, had not borne a child in nearly a decade. The bloodline was in danger, but Seti had a sister, Lady Asimeth, who shared the same golden blood. She was a priestess, revered for her wisdom, but also whispered about for the dark magic she practiced in secret. She had always been close to Seti, perhaps too close for comfort. For years, they ruled together, and it was her counsel that guided his decisions. Asimeth had the sharp mind of a strategist and the cold heart of a ruler. "The throne must be secured," she murmured, "for all of Amun, for our legacy. The gods are silent, but we are not. The future is written by those who dare to claim it." Her words, whispered as if they were sacred, echoed of the walls, unnoticed by those who would soon be trapped in her web. But power has a cost, and the path to immortality often wins through the most forbidden of choices. Lady Asimeth had seen what her brother could not, a way to ensure the throne would remain in their bloodline. A dark and twisted way, one that the gods themselves would never forgive. The kingdom was shaken when Seti's health began to falter. He was still young, barely past his 40th year, but something inside him was dying. No matter the sacrifices, no matter the offerings to the gods, no heir had been born to the throne. Desperate, Seti turned to his sister. "You know the ways of the gods better than I," he told her one night in the privacy of his chamber. "Find the answer, Asimeth. I will do whatever it takes to secure our legacy." Her response was swift. "You know what must be done. The gods will require an offering, one that binds blood to blood, flesh to flesh." Seti had never truly questioned her before. She was his confidant, his closest advisor. But as she spoke those chilling words, something stirred deep within him, a cold, unsettling feeling. Asimeth's eyes gleamed with an unnatural light. "The throne must remain in the blood of Amunra, brother. Only through the bond of flesh will we guarantee that. Only through a union that will bind us forever, in this life and the next." Seti's face darkened, but he said nothing. In the following days, rumors began to swirl through the palace. The priests, the servants, even the soldiers, the whispers spread. People spoke of strange rites, of rituals performed in the dead of night. Strange symbols were drawn in the dust of the royal chambers, and the scent of incense filled the air, choking the senses. One such night, when the moon was full and its pale light bathed the desert in ghostly silver, Seti and Asimeth stood before an ancient altar deep in the heart of the pyramid temple. This was the place of the old gods, where only the most powerful of sacrifices could be made. Lady Asimeth held a dagger in her hand, its blade black as midnight, its hilt carved from the bone of an ancient beast. "To secure our place," she said softly, "we must make a sacrifice that will bind us to the gods and to each other." Seti's heart raced. His body trembled. This was no ordinary ritual. He knew it was forbidden, known only to the high priests who had long since died off, leaving behind nothing but their cursed knowledge. But he had no choice. The air grew thick with tension, and then, with a single word from Asimeth, everything changed. "Together, we are Amunra." Her voice was a whisper, but the power behind it shook the very foundation of the pyramid. The winds howled, the earth trembled, and in that moment, Seti felt a dark force surge through him, a force he could not understand, yet could not deny. His sister's touch, cold and steady, gripped his hand, and in the shadow of the gods, he made his choice. He would marry her, not out of love, but for the throne, for the bloodline. "We shall rule as one forever," but a decision made in the shadows cannot remain hidden forever. And what they had done would soon come to haunt them, as the gods looked on in silence, waiting to deliver their punishment. The marriage between Seti and Asimeth was swift, hushed in the secrecy of the royal palace. Only a few knew of the union: the high priests, the closest advisors, and a select few within the inner circle of the Amunra dynasty. To the public, however, the marriage was a spectacle of grandeur, meant to solidify Seti's reign. But the truth was darker than anyone could imagine. On the night of the ceremony, the desert winds howled outside the palace gates, as if the very air rejected the union. The darkening sky seemed to mourn the vows that were spoken, words that were never meant to be uttered between siblings. As Seti gazed into his sister's eyes, a part of him recoiled, but another part, the part that had once been a king, proud and unyielding, shut down any doubts. He would do whatever it took to secure the throne, to secure his bloodline. "We are one now," Asimeth whispered as they exchanged their vows in the dimly lit hall, the air thick with incense. "Together we rule forever." The ceremony concluded, but the air remained heavy with a curse no one could see. Seti's heart thudded in his chest as the moonlight bathed the chamber in an eerie glow, casting long shadows against the walls. They were bound by blood, by fate, and by something much darker than either could comprehend. The months that followed the union were marked by an unsettling peace. Asimeth became the true power behind the throne, advising Seti with ruthless precision. She commanded the priests, she guided the army, and most importantly, she kept Seti at her side like a puppet, his strings pulled by her icy fingers. But something began to shift within Seti. His mind grew clouded with doubts, and his body felt weak. Dreams of shadowy figures, of ancient gods with burning eyes, plagued his nights. His nights with Asimeth became restless, filled with strange murmurs and whispers that seemed to come from her, though her lips never moved. In the palace, Seti's temper began to flare. He grew erratic. His behavior shifted from the confident ruler he once was to a man who seemed lost, haunted by something he could not grasp. The people began to whisper in the streets. The kingdom began to feel the weight of his madness. In the dead of night, Seti stood alone in a royal garden, staring up at the stars. His breath was shallow, his skin cold despite the desert heat. The shadows stretched long beneath him, as though the night itself was alive, watching, waiting. He could not escape the feeling that someone was watching him. The gods, once silent, had begun to stir, but the curse had already taken root. The union had not been a mere political maneuver. No, it was something far worse. The gods had seen the blood of Amunra twisted, and they would not remain silent for long. As Seti wandered deeper into the garden, his hand trembled as he brushed a wilted flower from its stem. The scent of decay filled his senses, suffocating him. Then, a voice, a low, almost imperceptible whisper, floated through the air. "The blood is tainted." Seti froze. The voice was not Azimuth's, though it sounded as if it came from her. But it was different, cold, alien. "What have we done?" Seti muttered to himself. "What have we unleashed?" He turned sharply to find Azimuth standing in the shadows behind him, her eyes glinting with a strange, unsettling fire. "You should not have come here, brother," she said, her voice sharp and cutting. Seti recoiled. "What is this? What is happening to me?" Azimuth stepped closer, her form almost blending with the darkness around them. "It is too late. You have already chosen your fate. We are bound by the blood, Seti, and the bloodline is cursed." Seti's heart pounded in his chest, a cold sweat forming on his brow. "What do you mean?" She smiled, but it was not a smile of warmth. It was a smile of something darker, something ancient. "The gods have seen the stain upon our union. They will never forgive us." The wind picked up, howling through the garden, as if it were the breath of the gods themselves. The night grew colder, and Seti's vision blurred. Was it the curse settling in, or was it something worse? The line between reality and nightmare began to thin, and he could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. As the weeks turned into months, Seti's descent into madness deepened. The palace, once a place of glory, had become a house of whispers and shadows. The servants no longer dared to speak in the king's presence. The priests avoided the throne room, their eyes always darting toward the door as though they feared an unseen presence. And Azimuth, she had become a figure of legend in the kingdom. Some believed she was a goddess in disguise. Others spoke of her as the true ruler of Amun, a ruler who held the heart of the Pharaoh in her hands. But the kingdom was dying. Crop failures ravaged the fields. The rivers ran dry. Plagues of locusts swept through the land, devouring everything in their path. The gods had begun their punishment, and the people of Amun had no idea why. Seti, lost in his madness, still clung to the idea that he could undo the damage he had caused. But as he turned to Azimuth for answers, he found her less and less present. She would disappear into the depths of the palace for days at a time, conducting rituals he dared not ask about. One evening, in a darkened chamber beneath the palace, Seti discovered something that would change everything. A hidden passageway, marked by symbols he had seen only in the oldest scrolls of the temple. His hand trembled as he followed the path deeper into the earth, until he reached an ancient vault. Inside, he found the truth, an artifact, a cursed relic, long sealed away. A necklace, its golden chain twisted and broken, its centerpiece a black stone, carved with an image of a serpent swallowing its own tail, the symbol of eternity. As Seti reached for it, his heart stopped. "You should not have come here, brother," Azimuth's voice echoed in the vault, cold and unforgiving. The necklace was the key to their downfall, and it had been waiting for Seti all along. The gods had not been silent, they had merely been waiting, and now the curse that had been set in motion would come to its final, terrible conclusion. Seti awoke with a start, his heart racing. The vision was still fresh in his mind, the cursed necklace, its black stone gleaming in the shadows. Azimuth's words lingered like a poison in his ears. He had made the mistake of seeking the truth, but now it seemed as though the truth was a thing that could never be undone. The necklace, the serpent, a symbol of eternity. But what did it mean? He rose from his bed, his body heavy with dread, and stumbled to the royal chamber. He needed to see Azimuth. She had to explain it all. She had to tell him that it wasn't too late, that they could reverse it, whatever it was. But when he entered her chambers, the air was thick with an unfamiliar chill. The room, once warm and full of life, was now suffocating. The walls seemed to close in on him, the shadows too long, too alive. Azimuth was standing by the window, her back to him. Her long, black robes billowed around her like a cloak of smoke, and her dark hair flowed like a river of midnight. "Azimuth," Seti called, his voice trembling. "What is this? What is happening to me?" She turned slowly, her eyes gleaming with a cold, unreadable expression. There was no warmth in them now, no sisterly affection, only a cruel, distant calculation. "You sought the truth, brother," she said, her voice echoing unnaturally, as if multiple voices spoke in unison. "And now you will pay the price for it." Seti's chest tightened. What have you done?" She stepped forward, and in that moment, he saw the truth of it. There was no redemption, no escape. "What I have done," she smiled, but it was not a smile of joy. It was a smile of triumph. "You are the one who made the choice. You are the one who married me. You are the one who sealed our fate. We are bound forever, Seti, not just by blood, but by the curse that runs deeper than any love could reach." Seti's mind spun. The pieces were falling into place, but they were too late. There was no way to undo it. She raised her hand, and with a flick of her fingers, the room seemed to darken even further. Shadows twisted and writhed like living things. The air grew heavier, suffocating. He could hear faint whispers, voices of those long dead, echoing in the walls. "It is done," she whispered. "The throne is ours, forever. But the price of power is always greater than we imagine." Seti, trapped in the web of his own desires, could not see the consequences of his actions until it was too late. The gods had cursed them both, and now the bloodline of Amunra would fall into darkness, never to rise again. The days that followed were filled with horrors. The kingdom of Amun, once prosperous and proud, began to decay under the weight of its cursed rulers. Crops continued to wither, rivers ran dry, and the very earth seemed to reject the Amunra name. The priests could no longer perform the sacred rites. Their hands trembled as they spoke the ancient prayers, and their voices faltered. The palace, too, seemed to crumble. Once a beacon of power, it now stood as a haunted monument to a dynasty lost. The people of Amun, once loyal and devoted, began to whisper in fear of their rulers. The name of Seti Amunra became a curse on their lips, and the whispers of rebellion grew louder. But Seti and Asimeth were deaf to the cries of the kingdom. Their love, their union, had become an obsession, a binding force so powerful that they no longer cared for the people they ruled. The throne, once a symbol of divine authority, had become a prison of their own making, and in that prison, they were trapped. Seti's mind cracked under the pressure. He became a shell of the man he once was, no longer a king, but a puppet in his sister's hands. Asimeth had taken control, her power growing with each passing day, feeding on Seti's weakness, on the fear that now permeated every corner of their reign. It was during the darkest of nights, as the moon rose full and pale over the desert, that Seti stumbled upon the final piece of the puzzle. He had found himself drawn to the royal tomb, a place where no one dared to enter, not since the days of the first Pharaoh. The tomb, buried beneath the Great Pyramid, held the remains of those who had once ruled Amun, but now it was an abandoned, desolate place, forgotten by time. The tomb was a labyrinth, its walls carved with strange symbols that Seti now recognized. The same symbols that had haunted him in his dreams, the same ones that had led him to the cursed necklace. At the heart of the tomb, he found the truth. A stone tablet, covered in dust and centuries of neglect, held the final secret. The curse had not only bound him to Asimeth in body, but in soul. The union between them had awakened a terrible force, one that the gods had sealed away long ago. A force that had destroyed entire dynasties in the past. A force that would soon destroy them too. Seti's heart raced as he read the inscription on the tablet. The bloodline of Amunra shall perish when the serpent consumes its own tail. Only then will the curse be broken, and the god's wrath be appeased. In that moment, Seti understood. The serpent, the symbol of eternity, was not a blessing. It was a warning. a warning of their inevitable destruction. The gods had not been silent, nor had they been cruel. They had simply waiting for the moment when the Amunra bloodline would consume itself. The serpent had eaten its tail, and now there would be no escaping the fate they had chosen. As Seti stumbled back from the tomb, the ground beneath him trembled. The air grew thick with an unnatural heat, and a deep, bone-chilling roar echoed through the pyramid. The earth itself seemed to be rejecting their presence, tearing apart the very foundations of the kingdom. And in that final, terrible moment, Seti and Asimeth, once the rulers of all Amun, became the last victims of their own dark choices. The kingdom of Amun fell into ruin. The desert swallowed the palace, and the people, once proud, were left to wander in the wasteland, their memories of the cursed bloodline fading into myth. The ruins of the kingdom now lie buried beneath the sands, forgotten by time. The names of Seti and Asimeth have been lost to history, their reign a mere shadow, a legend whispered in hushed tones. Yet, the question lingers. What of the curse? What of the serpent that devoured its own tail? Was the destruction of Amunra truly the end? Or was it the beginning of something far darker? Perhaps, somewhere in the depths of the desert, the bloodline still sleeps, waiting for the day when it will rise again. In the end, the thirst for power becomes a thirst for something far worse: immortality. It blinds us to the cost, the consequences, until it is too late. The serpent waits, and in the end, we are all consumed by our own desires.